Um, so my name's Andrew Greta, Senior Director here at Shield, Illinois. I've been running finance, strategy, and the research, the sponsored research program sort of rolls up under me. So that's who I am. I know we did some shout outs before, and I think one that we missed, but perhaps because she was giving the shout outs, is Rhiannon Clifton, who has done an amazing job, not only through the whole SHIELD program and coming in and helping us really get this thing operationalized and scaled, but acting as our impromptu MC here. So thank you, Rhiannon. I want to thank my team too, Amy, Tyler, and Allie, who kind of pitched in to help run some of the registration, and Amy's been running the event. Um, Maria Messmacher, hopefully most of you have met her. She's in the, what are we calling it, the Solutions Room? Shield Solutions Room, who actually put together this pitch for me and knows probably more about the Notice of Funding Opportunity than I do. So if I can't answer any questions, we'll be getting Maria on here. Let me just start by talking just a little bit about sort of the economics of SHIELD and how we operate it as a kind of as a business model. In the early days of the COVID pandemic, when the campus was rolling out their Campus SHIELD program, institutional leadership said, well, this is technology and capabilities that we have to serve the broader good for the rest of the state of Illinois and hopefully elsewhere. So they wisely, I think, pulled some folks from the College of Business, realizing that we needed some operational mindset to really get this thing built and scaled. So we went from basically zero, no org code, with 3 people in August of 2020. And by the time December rolled around, with a $10 million seed investment from the system of the University of Illinois system, began testing. And by the time February rolled around and we had our EUA in place, we had, I think, at least 6 fully operational CLIA labs with automation, PCR machines, and still not a single government dollar had come through. Thankfully, the private sector stepped up, and we ended up doing some deals with a couple of large companies, including ADM and Rivian over in Bloomington, Illinois, who wanted to keep their production line going. Obviously, ADM being part of the critical sort of food infrastructure, so that was pretty important. But also a lot of private universities, the U.S. District Courthouse, Argonne National Laboratories, and so we really began testing in earnest in the spring of 2021 with that sort of private set of individuals and businesses. Once we got into the summertime and had our EUA in place and the school program set up, the government funding started to come in. But we still ended up with probably about 15% of our total revenue came from the private sector. So I look at this operation as a matter of a fixed cost amortization, if you will sort of let me speak economics and business. So for example, if you have an operation where you're paying $1 million a month to host your labs and get those staffed and ready to go, if you run one test, the break-even cost of that test, you have to charge $1 million, right? Just to break even. When you run 1 million tests, that's $1 a test. Right? So we did our financial modeling based on what we thought was going to be the demand. That demand, especially during the I guess it was the winter of, what was it, 2021, 22? It went through the roof. So thankfully we were able to amortize our costs much more effectively and gain those economies of scale. So we actually cut prices to the state of Illinois. Then we also partnered with Battelle, who's here in the room, to bring in some federal dollars to stretch that even more. So the net of this is we were operating on a cost recovery basis for the public good, and we served the government and public customers, including the K through 12s, at a break-even basis. But we ended up with a little bit of extra funding from the private sector, which we now have some decisions to make about. But the universal belief is that we need to reinvest that. And we're going to reinvest that into initiatives that have long-term value, including the research that all of you, hopefully, are going to be doing, right? So we have a pool of funding that is going to be going out to those who make good proposals for us, that we can sort of cement the legacy of SHIELD, but also learn from what we can, what we've developed and what we've done here, so that we can advance science, do it better next time, right? Come up with very unique insights that this has given us a really good opportunity to do. Just to give you some quick insight in terms of how much has changed from the start of the pandemic. When we first started buying PCR machines, we had one manufacturer, and other automation and robotics, we had one manufacturer that refused to sell us the machines unless we also bought their RNA extraction reagents, right? And we said, we don't need them. He called me a liar to my face. He said, you must be sourcing them somewhere else because you can't do this without the RNA extraction step, right? We proved that you can. When we first started this, we asked the labs, how many tests do you think you can do? These are clinical labs that were used to doing a couple hundred tests a day, right? We had, I think Ron mentioned, we had 5, maybe 4 384 well plate, PCR machines. Nobody was doing high throughput, right? And they told us a couple hundred. I said, guess what? We're going to do 15,000 a day. Even the scientists couldn't believe it, but we did it because we got the business people in, the process improvement people in, and we worked it out, right? So those are some of the insights I think that are going to be really interesting. So I've heard a lot of things, a couple that I'd like to highlight during this session. Of areas that might be fruitful to think about, right? And I'm sure you all have your ideas as well. Communications seems like a big one, right? Especially in today's world where I literally was talking to somebody about masking, not masking, and she said, well, I just don't know what to do because I'm reading all sorts of things on Facebook both ways. I'm like, well, there's actually science, right, that we can rely on. How do we communicate better? How do we get these rumors off the table that we're, like, for example, extracting people's DNA and cloning them? I'm not kidding. That was something people thought we were doing. With the saliva samples. Of course, we don't do anything with human DNA, right? But those rumors got out there, and it made some trouble. So how do we communicate science more effectively to the population to get adoption? The local response. I thought that was a really interesting insight when you compare county by county. Who did better and why? Right? And that's got to be pretty apparent. When you think about the county responses, we've got to have a lot of data on that, and we can certainly provide what we have. Cost benefit. So one analogy that I make is that this is always a balance, right, between the cost, the societal cost, the monetary cost of reducing a risk. So if I wanted to eliminate traffic deaths in the country, right, I just eliminate all cars, right? That's one way to do it. But what cost is that to society to make, allow people to get around and actually, impact the economy, right? So what was the cost of testing and what was the cost of some of these remediation programs versus the benefit we received, right? And I think the benefits could be economic, but also kids in school, educational outcomes, things that we have actually believe we have protected the state and furthered, the lives and livelihoods of people in the state during the pandemic. The role of institutions in times of crisis. Any other university, any other big, large public university could have stepped up and done exactly what we did, but they didn't. Why not? They had the capabilities. Was it just a narrow mindset? Do they just think that their mandate was, just to educate students and send them off into the world? Or is there a broader picture that we can think about in terms of the institutional role of public universities and elsewhere? But also one that really strikes me from the front lines is we found out that the partners and the areas that did the best, usually, almost universally, had a very solid champion and leader who was willing to step up. We've seen that across the state. And there were others that just didn't, right? They just sat there with their heads in the sand. They didn't want to take a risk. They didn't want to do anything other than their day job. And I think it'd be really interesting to see what the difference is between those who really had good institutional leadership and people that were willing to champion things and step up. Logistics and supply chain, when I think about what we did from zero to, as Rod said, every single corner of the state, right, from Metropolis down to, the downtown Chicago, we were able to collect those samples and get them processed with a 13-hour turnaround time from the point you drooled to the time you got it on your phone, right? So that's pretty amazing. The supply chain, stuff that we ran into was epic, and we have stories of this stuff, where we were literally calling the senators of our state to unlock Customs and Border Patrol to escort a shipment of some of the consumables through O'Hare Airport because it got hung up in Customs. So we pulled out a lot of stops, and then. One thing I think would be really interesting is, our regulatory system is only set up for peacetime, is my impression, right? And we got into wartime with this pandemic. Why did it take us 8 months and I don't know how many rounds of back and forth with the FDA to get an approval to drool in a tube? I mean, it is insane, right? How long that took. And it was obviously going to work and it was protective, right? But why do we have to go through all of that? You know, are there things that we can be doing on a policy level that would help streamline some of those regulations for next time? So let me go into the notice of funding opportunity real briefly. So we are going to be accepting proposals for basic and applied research. And I'll even throw in case studies. If somebody actually had a teaching case study that's going to be publishable that we could teach to, let's throw that into the mix as well. So we've got to have the requirements that we're going to outline here in the notice of funding opportunity. So, and I'm not going to read all of this, but you know, the goals are really to fund public health research. Could be anywhere, right? It's not necessarily Illinois. I know we've got a lot of institutions represented here, and thank you for coming. We want to get published, right? We want this stuff out there. We think we made a difference. We think we have a lot of learnings that came out of this exercise and this program. But until we prove them scientifically in peer-reviewed journals, it's kind of like just folklore, right? It's what we think. We need to get this stuff out there because I think it's important. So we want to do better next time, and we want to be able to provide even better playbook for the future pandemics that we can build upon, right? So lessons learned. So some of the ideas here, you know, SHIELD is an intervention. What was our impact? What impact did we have? What were the lessons learned? And then utilizing data, which we just had the presentation on. We have a pretty robust data set, but there's more out there, as the researchers have found, that is even more powerful when those get merged. And yes, we've learned some of the challenges, but we've had some people that have already been working with this data. So hopefully that collaboration will be fruitful and it won't be as challenging for the researchers that are coming on board. All right, so proposals are going to be due May 2nd at 11:59 p.m. And if any of you are like my students, it's 11:59 and 38 seconds, and I'm getting inbounds coming in. Shield Illinois at uillinois.edu. Anna, are you still the point person on this stuff? Anna, you want to stand up, say hi? Everybody recognizes Anna? Okay. So she's going to be the point person for answering questions and fielding the proposals. We have a committee set up. It's across the Illinois Innovation Network. We have members from all across the state at all the public universities are going to be part of our committee to help us evaluate these proposals. And then we'll make the awards, right? And I think, what's the timing on the awards? I think we want to get these things out hopefully by the end of the fiscal year. Right? And I should say something about, so that's June 30th for us. One thing I should say is that these are going to be largely what we're calling kind of a fire and forget kind of a funding. So you're going to get a lump sum based on your proposal, right? And you're going to go off and do your research. You're going to have 2 years, I think, is kind of what we had said is sort of the outside. Hopefully people can do that in a shorter period of time, depending on the proposal. And then you're going to report back. You report back to the UI system, right? SHIELD is going away, but the people are still going to be within the system itself. And you're going to need to report back and let us know what your findings are. And that will likely be part of that committee that we've got set up across the Illinois Innovation Network, okay? Proposals, you know, this is basic stuff: cover page, abstract, team biographies, cost proposals. These are the types of things that we can include, right, in your funding. And by the way, this is all available in the NOFO. It's, I don't know, probably a 8-10 page document that we've got over in the solutions room, but also online on the app. Okay, and always feel free to email us if you need another copy. We would love to see some matching, right? Shows that you guys have some skin in the game. And it's going to help you extend your capabilities and your ability to produce something on a larger scale. We'll entertain anything, right? From 200,000 or 20,000 to 150,000. You tell us what you need, and we'll evaluate that based on what we think the value of that type of research is going to be. So any questions for me before we kick you off over into cocktail hour? How are we doing on time? Oh, good. I didn't want to go the full half hour. So. What else? Well, I mean, the name of the game, right, is to get this stuff in published journals, right? Peer-reviewed, and or a teaching case study that, again, could be published and taught in classrooms. So does that help answer? Okay.
If there's a disease mitigation, does it have to be using shield testing as its mitigation?
No. But we want, attribution if you're using our data or any information that you're getting from us. I can also say, you can look at this stuff subjectively too. We can put you in touch with the players and the people, right, to let you know and to give you some of those insights about how the program rolled out. So it doesn't always necessarily have to be data. We can make access available to the actual SHIELD people, the institutional leadership, whoever else is needed that you want to do more sort of subjective research for or with.
Okay, I was given the mic, so I guess I'll go next.
Yeah.
Is additional data collection efforts in scope as well? So I know that you talked about surveys of people who did the SHIELD testing, but maybe surveys about willingness to participate and drivers of that to kind of figure out how to optimize future testing strategies. Is that in scope?
Yeah, I mean, that's not something that SHIELD Illinois will be collecting, right? I mean, we're going to have our testing data through June 30th. But what we do have is connections at these 1,700 different school locations, right, that where we tested, which we can certainly share. And I think the question and the challenge, we're going to have is there's certainly been a lot of COVID fatigue, right, and getting people that are going to be responsive and answering that, especially given turnover. There's been a lot of burnout in some of these areas as well. But that's absolutely can be in scope for sure.
Any other questions from anybody?
Well, we'll be around if anything pops up. Oh, we got something great. Yeah.
Is there a question? No. Oh. Nope, sorry.
No problem.
One comment is, this is a great opportunity to involve public health, right? So Dr. Barnes kicked us off this morning talking about academic and public health relationships and partnerships. So it's a great, opportunity for collaboration there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we wanted to bring everybody together here so that you can have the opportunity to think about, learn about what's been done, talk to other people in your field, collaborate, figure out if there are great combinations of researchers across institutions that could work on some of this stuff. I think it's fascinating how everybody kind of is taking different approaches to it. And I was really, interested in the Saliva Direct, for example, like how Yale rolled their program out in contrast with ours. Both serving the public good, and I don't think any of us are competitors here, right? We're collaborators, and we want to make sure that we are doing the right thing to take the capabilities and the experience that we've had, and not let them just sort of die or sit on a shelf, right? We want to make sure that they are being used of value to create value for, society as a whole. All right. Is that it? All right. Cocktail hour. We're going to make our way into, it's just the lobby area out here, right? We've got bar, food. I think we're going till about 7:30, right? So enjoy and let us know if you have any other questions, and then we'll see you tomorrow morning.